whoever you are, no matter how lonely. The world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. The bell and the geese call us together in covenant, to bring our search for truth and meaning, to unfold into understanding, sense into love. Today, let us especially remember our covenant to affirm and promote the fourth principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning.
Good morning, everyone. If you haven't yet, please take a moment to silence your cell phones. Put them on buzz or vibrate or whatever works for you. And then stand in body or spirit for our opening hymn, number 398 in the gray hymnal, To See the World in a Grain of Sand. Those of you with us on Zoom, hello, can find the lyrics on the last page of the online order of service, linked in your worship reminder email or on our website, cuucwp.org. Number 398. To see the world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. You may be seated.
Good morning. My name is Chris Cortland. I'm part of the Board of Trustees, and this morning we have our chalice lighting. On the fourth Sunday of the season, we dedicate our chalice to the fourth principle of our faith, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We invite those online to light a chalice or a candle at home and read along from the order of service linked to on our website, cuucwp.org. Please join me in the chalice lighting words from Leslie Napoleon Lovely. We light this chalice to affirm that new light is ever waiting to break through to illumine our way. That new truth is ever waiting to break through to enlighten our minds. And that new love is ever waiting to break through our warm hearts. Thank you.
Good morning. Welcome to Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation, White Plains, New York, former home of the Lenape Nation and of more biodiversity than at present. I'm the Reverend Meredith Garmon, minister.
I'm Reverend Stevie Carmody, your worship associate. I'm a community minister. My affiliation with this congregation is in exploration.
And I'm Adam Kent, music director.
Welcome to this home of liberal religion.
Welcome to this home of liberal religion. Here we affirm that it's a blessing you were born. It matters what you do. Your experience of the divine is true. And you don't have to go it alone.
Today is the fourth Sunday of autumn, signified by four oil lights beside our chalice. The hunter's moon was full last Sunday and is now waning gibbous. Mercury and Venus are in Libra, Mars is in Gemini, Jupiter is in Aries, Saturn is in Aquarius, Uranus is in Taurus, Neptune is in Pisces, and you are right here. in person or virtually.
I got the Jewish stuff. Kent is not a Jewish name, but that is my ancestry. Today is the last day of the week-long Jewish holiday Sukkot, also called the Feast of Tabernacles. The Sukkot period is a time to remember the Jewish people's wandering in the desert for 40 years following their exodus from Egypt, and to celebrate the grape harvest. This seventh day of Sukkot is known as Hoshana Rabbah, the day of the final sealing of judgment, which began on Rosh Hashanah.
We give a special welcome to our visitors. If you are new today and are comfortable being recognized, please wave a hand so we can welcome you. And if you are new here today online, please introduce yourself in the chat. Those online may find a link to the order of service on our website at cuucwp.org. There you will also find resources to help keep us connected and a donate button. For October, our Share the Plate funds go to PrideWorks, which supports LGBTQ youth and their allies. We are also able to take contributions via the donate button on our webpage for your pledge, for the plate share, and for the minister's discretionary fund.
And if you have a joy, sorrow, or milestone you'd like to share, you may write it in our Joys and Sorrows book on the table to my right. And for those of you at home on Zoom, please enter it into the chat and making the first word be joy, sorrow, or milestone, so we'll know which chat entries are meant for us to speak aloud. This week, we especially recall our fourth principal covenant to affirm and promote the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And last week, we sang hymn number 34. The third verse says, "Come, Spirit, come, our hearts control. Our spirits long to be made whole. Let inward love guide every deed. By this we worship and are freed." Our spirits long to be made whole. Even when we understand that we are whole, the world leaves us so often feeling that we aren't. It's the disconnect. We don't feel connected with our neighbors. And the fragmentation in the nation's public political life produces a fragmentation in our psyches. We need to feel part of something we're all in together. Then we are whole. Yet we've lost the sense that we are in this together. As we approach this election day in just over 3 weeks from now, it's been 6 years since the 2016 presidential election rocked our world, exposed the powerful disconnect in our country. So many of our fellow Americans saw things so differently from how most of us did. The rising meritocracy, by its nature and design, left many behind. And maybe we shouldn't have been surprised, but we were surprised at the intensity of resentment about that. Come, let us reflect today about deservingness. Let us engage our free and responsible search for truth and meaning, to look into our concepts of who deserves what and when, and the better that we all deserve. Come, Spirit, come. Our hearts control. Our spirits long to be made whole. Amen.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for
is the custom of this congregation to greet each other with wishes and blessings of peace. I invite you now to turn to those around you and extend those wishes and blessings.
Yeah, without. So I'll try to write them down right now. Do you see them? I hope he's not in the kitchen. There he is. Oh, okay. I'm going to take them if you're a little taller.
Good morning. My name is Al Roki. Oh, it's not on, huh?
Now it is.
Good morning again. My name is Al Roki. Along with Terry Kung, I'm a member of the Congregational Self-Assessment Committee. First of all, we'd like to thank you on behalf of the committee for your input so far. We received over 80 responses to the survey that we sent out, and we had over 80 people participate in our full-day Path to the Future workshop. Terry and I and the rest of the committee are hard at work reading, collating, and summarizing your input for a final report, which will be done in December.
We have a final step to complete our process, a series of cottage meetings or focus groups. These will be groups that delve more deeply into topics of specific interest within the congregation. Our first in a series that will happen over the next 2 months is today at 11:30 in room 11. Today's group will be specifically for those of you who were unable to attend the full-day workshop. We also have an online group scheduled for this Wednesday at 7 p.m., again for those who were unable to attend the full-day workshop and are unable to be with us today in person.
Upcoming cottage meetings topics are supporting and welcoming families, increasing accessibility, nurturing our spirituality, and expanding diverse voices in our congregation.
Please see the e-communitarian for dates and times of these meetings. Some meet in person after coffee hour, others meet online on Wednesday evening in Zoom. Our team is hosting coffee hour today, so please don't hesitate to ask us if you have any questions about the upcoming meetings. We also have the schedule printed out, and we are excited to hear your input, feedback, and ideas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Today's announcements. As you just heard from Terry and Al, after the service is the first Path to Our Future focus group in room 11. Also, meeting today is the walk-up journey group. And in an amendment to your order of service, you'll find the Meals of Hope cooking crew on Monday. If you can, please lend them a hand. On Tuesday morning, the Hope sandwich team will be the ones in the kitchen. If you'd like to sign on as a substitute volunteer, contact Ellen Simon. We invite everyone to bring in individual-sized food items which our volunteer families will use to make up lunch bags for Hope Community Services later this month. Look for the labeled bins in the lobby. Next Sunday is our first congregational brunch in a long, long while. We need many helping hands to bring back this tasty event. Please see Kate Colson. The next evening, Monday, October 24th, the Racial Justice in the Spirit of Truth team will meet on Zoom. All are welcome. See Jeff Tomlinson. Our auction fundraiser needs your donations to be a success. What goods or services will you offer to our state fair? Stop by the lobby auction table to pick up a form. While you are in the lobby, notice our little gold suggestion box. The CUUC board invites you to leave your comments, concerns, and compliments. The next installment of our Odyssey program will be here in the sanctuary after worship on October 30th with a special guest, Karen Schatzel. So mark your calendars. A reminder that we require face masks for all folks attending in-person services, and we encourage those with us here in person to take a turn one Sunday supporting our ministry of welcoming by volunteering to usher and to host a Sunday coffee hour. You will find details and links for these and more in our e-communitarian newsletter posted on our website, cuucwp.org. If you are interested in becoming a member of CUUC, please speak to our minister, Reverend Meredith Garmon, or contact our administrator to make an appointment.
One Caleb Rich, born in Sutton, Massachusetts in 1750, was at first brought up Congregationalist. Later, his father became Baptist, and the family attended both churches. Which religion, the Congregationalists or the Baptists, was the correct one? Which one would lead to salvation? Young Caleb had many discussions with friends and siblings about these questions. One day, a friend asked simply, "How do we know either of them is right?" This blew Caleb's mind. That the Congregationalists and Baptists might both be wrong had never entered his head. Caleb Rich would later say, "Never in my life had I heard anything from the lips of man that had such a deep and lasting impression on my mind." They could both be wrong? Any of us could be wrong. I could be wrong, realized Caleb. As way leads on to way on the spiritual journey, Caleb Rich slowly found it less and less likely that God would send people to eternal damnation for having an incorrect opinion. Caleb Rich found himself some years later in Warwick, Massachusetts, ministering a congregation and preaching Universalist ideas. Meanwhile, about 6 miles away, just over the state line in New Hampshire, on the Ballou farm, a teenaged Hosea Ballou was himself beginning to wonder if it could really be true that God willed eternal damnation for most of the human race, as Hosea's father believed. Hosea scoured his Bible looking for confirmation. He found a number of passages that seemed to contradict what he'd been taught all his life, and none that said most of humanity was condemned to hell forever. Right about then, word started to drift over from Warwick that there was a minister there named Caleb Rich who was preaching a strange doctrine called universalism. In prayer, we take a moment to solemnly remind ourselves of our hopes, our intentions, and our gratitude, that they may guide and affirm our actions and our being. Will you then pray with me? Dear Spirit of love, let our thoughts and our hearts open in compassion. Let us bring to our attention and hold there the victims of a school shooting in Thailand where 24 preschoolers were shot and killed along with 13 other people. Victims of a suicide bombing in Kabul, Afghanistan classroom where over 50 people were killed. Victims of Russian missile attacks on several busy Ukrainian cities, resulting in the deaths of civilians, injuring many more, and knocking out power and heat. Let our thoughts and our hearts open in gratitude for the work of the Nobel Peace Prize recipients, Belarus-based human rights advocate Ales Bialatsky, Ukrainian human rights organization, the Center for Civil Liberties, and Russian human rights organization Memorial. Let us gratefully remember this week-long Jewish holiday of Sukkot, celebrated by Jews around the world, reminding us all of our ancestors and our human frailty. Let our hearts celebrate Tulsi Govind Gowda, who has devoted her life to transforming vast swaths of barren land in her native state of Karnataka in southern India into dense forests. And Swiss-American architect David Montalba, who invites the natural world into the homes that he creates with a focus on light and water. The majestic sandhill cranes, who have been saved from the brink of extinction. Let our thoughts and our hearts open in compassion. And may we thus prepare our spirits for the actions to embody our compassion. We'll now observe a moment of silence. Blessed be. Amen.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be well with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you
Here, the free and responsible search for truth and meaning is central. We stand under no rule of bishops or denominational hierarchy. Along with our free and search for truth and meaning comes free self-governance. We make our own bylaws, elect our board, hire our own staff, call our own minister, buy and own and maintain our own building and grounds. It is up to us alone to fund the maintenance of our home, the programs, the ministry, through which we nurture our spirits and help heal the world. Thus, truly, the offering is indeed a sacrament of free congregations. The offering will now be given and received in grateful appreciation of our shared hopes and values.
Thank you, Reverend Stevie. If you've been coming to CUUC for a while, you may notice that I play a lot of music that's not especially familiar, that's not widely performed, like the works by the Catalan composer Federico Mompou I played earlier today, and now this piece by the composer from Madrid, Ernesto Halfter, the Dance of the Shepherdess. To my taste, if music were a meritocracy, their music would be much more widely known than it is.
from Norman Fisher's Training in Compassion, adapted from medieval Tibetan teachings called Lojong, our 23rd slogan to live by is maintain joy and humor. Yes, joy and humor are spiritual needs and spiritual imperatives. You may ask, can I decide to make myself joyful when I'm in a bad mood? Well, that's why this one comes 23rd. If you've been paying heed to the first 22, then you probably learned to trust yourself more, to be honest about your shortcomings without condemning yourself for them. Maybe you've gotten the hang of how to practice with difficulty and can face difficult emotions without denial or avoidance. If you've been working on determination, repetition, owning your nobility, reproaching your demons, aspiring to the impossible, and so on, you may be in a better mood more of the time than you have ever been, and a feeling of joy and gratitude isn't so foreign as it used to be. In fact, joy is never very far away. As we continue to train, we have more and more choice about how we respond to what happens to us. The boundless nature of things is always close at hand. And if you've been doing your practice, then this is something that you think about, that you're aware of. Working with this slogan is not a matter of pressuring ourselves to feel joy all the time. When we're depressed or bitter, we need to know that we feel that way, not cover it up with a fake veneer of joy. The point is simply to notice when we have joy and humor and when we don't. When we don't, then investigate that and inquire, which of the trainings I've learned would be relevant right now? Please read the full post at cucmatters.org.
Please rise in body or spirit for hymn number 194 in the gray hymnal, Faith is a Forest. There's a forest in which doubts play and hide. Insight can hear the still small voice deep inside. Web of life, may this thread I weave, strength and commitment to all I believe. Vision be my guide as I seek my way. Lead me into this tender day. Speak through me in all I do and say. Seeds of both me, strong or scattered in air. Dignity shines undimmed by bigotry's glare. Web of life, may this thread I weave. Help me bear witness to all I believe. Justice be my guide as I seek my way. Lead me into this tender day. Speak through me in all I do and say. Fortune and famine ride the swift winds of chance. Sorrow and pleasure seem united in dance. Web of life, may this thread I weave. Mingle compassion with all I believe. Mercy be my guide as I seek my way. Lead me to this tender day. Speak through me in all I do and say. You may be seated.
What is your dessert theory? I don't mean your theory about a sweet dish at the end of a meal. In this case, it's dessert with one S spelled like the word for an arid region, but I'm not asking for your theory of arid regions either, nor am I asking about leaving or abandoning, like deserting your post or your partner. I'm asking about dessert in the sense of just desserts, deservingness. We very commonly talk and think in terms of who deserves what. We say that a hardworking student who produces work of high quality deserves a high grade, that a vicious criminal deserves a harsh penalty, that someone who's suffered a series of misfortune deserves some good luck for a change. An athlete might deserve a prize in virtue of having excelled in a competition. A researcher might deserve our gratitude for having perfected a vaccine against a disease. Someone who acts without any regard for the welfare of others may deserve our contempt. The victim of an industrial accident may deserve compensation from her negligent employer. An employee may deserve a promotion in virtue of evident talent, hard work, and years of valuable service. A candidate for office who is conscientious, civic-minded, and shares your values and priorities may deserve your vote. All the ways that we use a concept of deservingness reflect our implicit desert theory. So let's examine a little bit this idea of deservingness. Desert, or deservingness, is a kind of fiction, a social imaginary, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have a real potency to make a big difference in our lives. Take money, for example. That is also a fiction, a social imaginary. It used to be a shiny yellowish metal that was too soft to be useful, but we agreed it was valuable, and so it was. Then it was just slips of paper, and now it's even more imaginary. But since we've agreed to share in this imagination, we've developed clear procedures for when you have it and how much, and the electrons inside of bank computers keep track of each person's amount. Desert is that kind of fiction. How deserving you are and of what is not nearly as precisely determined as how much money you have, yet desert does powerfully shape our lives and the ways we treat each other. Sometimes we say a person deserves something if they're entitled to it. We might say a customer deserves a refund from a merchant if the customer produced a product that was sold with a guarantee and the product turned out to be defective. But being entitled to something is one way to deserve it, but not the only way. Entitled means there are rules in place that say this is what you are to get, but sometimes our sense of what is deserved doesn't match up with what the rules might say. Suppose a wealthy old man dies, leaving behind 2 grandsons, one of whom is vicious and never treated his grandfather with respect, and one was virtuous and always respectful and caring. We would feel the virtuous grandson deserved to inherit more of the fortune, but the vicious one would nevertheless be entitled to the greater share if that was what the will stipulated. So you can be entitled to some reward even if you don't deserve it, and you can deserve something without being entitled to it. Some things, we say, everyone deserves. Everyone deserves fairness and justice and human rights. Then there are other cases where only one or some people will get that job or that promotion or the win, and we might talk about which person deserves it or deserves it more. I think a lot of our desert theory is mostly absorbed from talk around us. We hear people around us talk about what so-and-so deserves, and over time we imbibe what we hear around us. But sometimes we do reason with each other about deservingness. It's not always just an intuition. It can be reasoned about. This is easiest to see when it comes to what we think everyone deserves, just in virtue of being a person, and the history of how our notions of that have evolved. We have just in recent centuries, for instance, developed a wide consensus about human rights as the upshot of a few centuries of discussing and arguing and reasoning about human rights. We now have the UN Declaration on Human Rights, essentially a statement of what every person deserves. It says everyone deserves they deserve life, liberty, security of person, equal protection of the law, freedom of movement and residence, rest and leisure, education, participation in the cultural life of their community, to have a nationality, to be able to marry and found a family, to own property, to practice their religion, to express opinions, to have a job and be fairly compensated. And everyone deserves not to be enslaved, tortured, or subjected to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment, or arbitrarily arrested. The idea that everyone deserves these things was completely alien to any society 1,000 years ago. The UN Declaration on Human Rights is certainly woefully unenforced and widely violated, but that it could be expressed at all as an ideal and adopted by a coalition of nations required a lot of discourse and convincing over centuries. Deservingness can be, and sometimes is, argued for and argued against. And so we come to the argument for meritocracy, that positions of greatest power and prestige should be open to everyone on the basis of merit, that merit deserves those positions. The U.S. never had an official aristocracy, but it certainly had an unofficial one. The old money families got into the best schools and went out to the best paying and most powerful positions in society. The argument for meritocracy was an argument that people of merit deserved those positions, not people of breeding. So meritocracy seemed like a great step forward for justice and fairness. Ivy League institutions from their founding up until about 1960 admitted only white Christian men, and within that group selected students for breeding. These were schools for the sons of well-established families. And then in the middle of the 20th century, Harvard President James Bryant Conant and slightly later Yale President Kingman Brewster chose to abandon their historic role as finishing schools for America's aristocracy. Daniel Markovits writes, "Alumni had long believed that their sons had a birthright to follow them to Yale, and now prospective students would gain admission based on achievement rather than breeding." Meritocracy, for a time, replaced complacent insiders with talented and hardworking outsiders. Surely a very positive move, right? People with merit deserved to get admitted. People of aristocratic breeding had no special deservingness. And by 1970, indeed, a fierce merit-based competition had completely replaced the old cordial alliance between the universities and old money established families. Today, however, it is past time to reconsider our judgments of deservingness based on that notion of merit. We tend to think that merit is the product of two things, talent and effort. And we often overlook the importance of a third factor, quality training. Excellence at basketball or at chess or at the piano or at any academic subject is not just a matter of native ability combined with dedication and determination. We will look further into the role of quality training after an interlude with a piece of music that piano students train on all over the world.
Thank you, Reverend Meredith. And yes, if you are a talented, hardworking piano student willing to put the effort into learning Beethoven's Für Elise, you should have that joy. But perhaps if you are a longtime teacher of piano students, you could be forgiven for feeling you deserve a break from it too. So here's hoping your perspective is different from mine.
could spend 8 hours a day practicing that piece, or practicing a skill like skateboarding, say, or tap dancing, or playing chess, or clarinet, or writing poetry, and you wouldn't make as much progress as you will if you have a skilled, attentive coach or teacher guiding your practice. Further, as competitive sports program knows, it takes more than a good coach. It takes platoons of coaches and lots of expensive equipment. I didn't quite grasp why my university thought it needed to spend $50 million to build a shiny new athletic training facility, but apparently a school cannot be competitive at Division I football without it. And resources make a difference. Because quality training is so crucial, it means a big part of what admissions departments regard as merit can be bought. So what started out as a move to open up elite institutions to deserving students from the middle and lower classes now entrenches the advantages of wealth. Expensive private schools pay off. A typical public public high school spends $15,000 per child per year. Some poorer public high schools spend $8,000 to $10,000 per child per year. But the top 20 private schools, as measured by Forbes, average $75,000 per child per year. And this buys results. It buys training, it buys smaller class size, it buys more teacher attention, it buys more talented teachers, it buys careful educational programs. And the result is that while the average middle class kid's SAT is 125 points higher than the average score of kids in poverty, the average score of kids whose parents earn more than $200,000 a year is 250 points greater than the average middle class kid. What does your desert theory say about whether the wealthier kids deserve those higher scores? Discounting the few who cheated outright, we can say, yes, they had talent and they worked hard. On the other hand, they also had lots of quality training that was not available to middle and lower class kids. The result is that at Ivy League and at what are called Ivy League Plus schools, the proportion of students who come from the top 1% of household incomes is greater than the proportion that come from the entire 50%, bottom 50% of household incomes. And this comes as the upshot of meritocratic admissions policies that were originally supposed to reverse that very disparity. Further, what students get when they arrive on campus is more quality training from much greater resources being spent on them at those elite institutions. The students and their families don't even have to pay for most of what they get. There's an enormous public subsidy that results from universities being taxed as charities, with alumni donations being tax deductible and endowments able to grow without being taxed. Princeton's tax exemption amounts to a public subsidy of $100,000 per student per year. Rutgers' public subsidy is less than $13,000 per student per year, and nearby Essex Community College has a public subsidy of $2,500 per student per year. We are pouring vast public resources into further advantaging the already advantaged. What does your desert theory say about that? And just as the resources expended at elite high schools matter for preparing the students to get into and succeed at elite universities, the resources expended at elite universities matter for preparing students to get into and succeed at the highest paying jobs. Many of the top law firms and financial institutions will only recruit at a few elite universities and rarely hire graduates of an average state school. So that's one thing for us to think about, that our intuitions about the deservingness of merit often overlook the vastly unequal distribution of quality training. Now let's look at another factor. Our desert theory tends to say that working hard increases deservingness. But don't we also recognize that there is such a thing as working too hard? It's not that the children of the elites aren't working hard for what they get. In fact, overall, they are working too hard. The pressure on the elite kids to do well is inordinate. As Daniel Markovits writes, elite middle and high schools now commonly require 3 to 5 hours of homework a night. Epidemiologists at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have warned of schoolwork-induced sleep deprivation. Wealthy students show higher rates of drug and alcohol abuse than poor students do. They also suffer depression and anxiety at rates as much as triple those of their age peers throughout the country. Recent study of a Silicon Valley high school found that 54% of the students displayed moderate to severe symptoms of depression, and 80% displayed moderate to severe symptoms of anxiety. So what does your desert theory say about whether someone deserves what they're working for if what they're working for is a sleep-deprived, depressed, anxious, unhappy life? And it's only getting worse as the competition is getting more and more intense. Exclusive institutions are getting more and more exclusive. As recently as 1995, the University of Chicago admitted 71% of its applicants. And in 2019, it admitted less than 6%. It's getting worse. Then, notes Markovits, the contest intensifies when meritocrats enter the workplace, where elite opportunity is exceeded only by the competitive effort required to grasp it. A person whose wealth and status depend on her human capital simply cannot afford to consult her own interests or passions in choosing her job. Instead, she must approach her work as an opportunity to extract value from her human capital, especially if she wants an income sufficient to buy her children the type of schooling that secured her own eliteness. She must devote herself to a narrowly restricted class of high-paying jobs concentrated in finance, management, law, and medicine. Whereas aristocrats once considered themselves a leisure class, meritocrats work with unprecedented intensity. It used to be it was the poor that worked long hours and the rich were the leisure class. Not that that was a good system, but it's striking that now it's more often the rich who are working 70, 80 hours a week. And they are working at a job they aren't particularly happy at often. Do you say that this is getting what they deserve because it's the punishment they deserve? Elite workers, Markovits goes on to say, find it harder and harder to pursue genuine passions or gain meaning through their work. Meritocracy traps entire generations inside demeaning fears, inauthentic ambitions, always hungry but never finding or even knowing the right food. Moreover, doesn't your desert theory suggest there should be some connection between the income a given job deserves and its actual contribution to society? And yet that connection has been getting weaker and weaker. Don't both the losers and the winners of meritocratic rat race deserve better than they are getting? The basic conceit of meritocracy is that those who succeed deserve to. So those in less prestigious positions in society internalize the message that it's their own fault. They grow resentful at the elite. And yes, they start voting for populist demagogues. As Markovits notes, demagogues and charlatans monopolize and exploit meritocracy's discontents. Meritocratic inequality, therefore, induces not only deep discomfort, but also widespread pessimism, verging on despair. Don't we all deserve better? Don't we all deserve a society with dramatically expanded access to quality training? A society where we all have a chance to contribute meaningfully to the overall social good, and where a person's income bears some relationship to their real contribution to society. And also, a society that insists on that right affirmed in the UN Declaration of Human Rights to rest and leisure, including reasonable limitation of working hours and periodic holidays with pay. May all of that be so. Amen.
Please rise in body or spirit for our last hymn in the teal hymnal, 1074, Turn the World Around. And this one is, if you're reading along, it has a lot of twists and turns. And if any of my fellow choir members out there, yeah, raise your hands. If you can help us along here, we're just going to follow along. If you ever run into the little lines with the 2 dots on it, means go back and do it again. So, here we go. We come from the fire, living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water. Go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the mountain, living on the mountain. Go back to the mountain, turn the world around. Oh, so is life. Ah, so is life. Oh, so is life. Ah, so is life. Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? Do we want another? Do we know who we are? Do we know who I am? Do I know who you are? See, we want another clearly. Do we know who we are? Oh, so is life apatewa. So is life. Oh, so is life apatewa. So is life. Make the river wash the mountain. Heart is on the Heart is in the river, body is the mountain, spirit is the sunlight, turn the world around. We are of the Spirit, truly of the Spirit, only can the Spirit turn the world around. Oh, so is life apatewa. So is life. 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 Thank you.
Thank you for being with us this morning, and please join me in gratitude for our worship team, musicians, greeters, ushers, and tech team. We invite those with us here in the sanctuary to stay for coffee, refreshments, and conversation after service in Fellowship Hall. Parents, please pick up your children beforehand. Remember to place your name tag in the basket in the lobby when you leave today. Those with us on Zoom can log out of this space when the service concludes and log into our coffee hour Zoom. The link is on our website and we will post it in the chat. As we extinguish the chalice here, those at home are invited to extinguish their chalices as well. Now please join me in saying the chalice lighting extinguishing words. This is the message of our faith, to act with passion in the face of injustice, to love with courage in the midst of life's pain. This is the meeting of our chalice's flame. May it empower our hearts until we go together again. Thank you.
Live, friends, your covenants to search for truth and meaning. And in the words of John Brigham, go your ways, knowing not the answers to all things, yet seeking always the answer to one more thing than you know. Go in peace.